Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I will be reviewing Love is Blind Italy. I am really excited to review this. Love is Blind has become one of my favorite, I think, reality TV shows in general. After Love is Blind season 9, Denver, Colorado, I'm excited for another Love is Blind season. Let's hope that this Italy season is better than that Denver, Colorado season, okay? So boom, let's get into it. The very first thing I noticed episode 1 is that the women this season, I think look great. Like, I think they're stunning. The guys look good too, you know, but I just specifically noticed that I feel like they chose women that looked really, really good. So the pods are open. These first couple episodes with Love is Blind to me are always kind of a lot because you're having to kind of follow so many different pod situations. So yeah, let's just jump right in. So we are first introduced to Ludovica, and she is 31 years old. She says that in her past, there were many times where she thought that she had found the one, but that wasn't the case. One thing that stood out to me that she said was that she's not that confident, or at least she says she's not as confident as she comes across, which makes me wonder, okay, why? Because clearly she's saying that there are some insecurities there. She then goes on to say that no one in her life has ever chosen her or made her a priority, and that when you experience that, you know, it can be hard to feel like you're worth it. And I really didn't like this statement. I thought to myself, how many women or even men out there haven't been chosen by anyone, right? Or haven't found that person? I don't think that you not being chosen has anything to do with your level of self-worth. So the first thing I picked up on Ludovica is potential insecurity. So she says she wants someone to like her for who she is and not what she looks like. So obviously this Love is Blind experiment is the perfect situation for that. And Ludovica works in the fashion industry in Milan. The first person that we see that she's speaking to is a guy named Nicola. Nicola is 30 years old. He's Russian, and it looks like he also lives in Milan. So him and Ludovica live in the same place. He played soccer professionally for years and had a really bad injury, which made him kind of, you know, get out of soccer, and now he's in like commercial sales or something. And he basically goes on to say that when he was playing soccer, he was a little bit of a player, a little bit of a womanizer, but he basically says that he's not like that anymore. You know, he doesn't play soccer anymore. He's out of that life and he's looking to settle down. Ludovica opens up that she grew up with her grandparents, and she basically says that, you know, I think her dad might have passed away when she was little, and then her mom, she just wasn't very close to her. So she grew up with her grandparents, you know, to the point that she says she has her grandparents tattooed on her. Nicola responds and says that he actually has his grandparents tattooed on himself as well. So he's also very close to his grandparents. We see that this is the first thing that they kind of bond over, like, oh, what a coincidence, you know? Then we see Nicola telling the cameras, like, you know, like walking, and he says that in the past, a woman's appearance has been a big priority for him. And, you know, that's something he's excited that he doesn't have to really prioritize in this experiment. And that he's not trying to be a player anymore. He's ready to settle down. Okay, next we see Nicola, and he is talking to Karen. Karen is 35 years old. She's Brazilian, and she's beautiful. You know, that's the first thing I noticed about Karen. She says that she moved out on her own at only 15 years old. So, you know, Karen is independent. She's been kind of on her own for a while. Her dad passed away when she was young, and she's not that close to her mom. So she basically has a really good group of friends that she's very close to. We also find out that Karen has a 15-year-old son, and she says that she wants to build the family that, you know, she never had growing up. We see Nicola say that hearing that she has a son is not a problem for him. He's like, that's not a problem at all. You know, I'm okay with that. And what I wrote down about their connection is, I don't know, they had very different energy between him, Nicola, and Ludovica, but I liked the conversation that they had. And I like Karen. Something about Karen seems very level-headed, calm. I like Karen a lot so far. So we then see Ludovica, and she is also speaking with a man named Davide, who is 37 years old. He runs an insurance brokerage. One of the first conversations we see between Ludovica and Davide is he's asking her, what if she's not cute? Which I was like, this is a strange thing to say, because the whole point of Love is Blind is to not talk about that, right? It's like, okay, if she's not cute, you fell in love with her for other reasons, right? Like, we already just see that he's trying to get into some of the superficiality of things. So I was like, okay, where is this going to go? We're then introduced to Giovanni, and he's 36 years old. Giovanni says that he believes in chivalry. He says he wants to cherish his wife, and he spent a long time working, and he is now ready to focus on, building a marriage and settling down. And one of the first things I noticed about Davide is he was kind of like talking to some of the other women. They were showing clips of him talking to multiple women in the pods. And you kind of get this sense that he's kind of like Rico Suave, likes to say what you want to hear, but you don't really know if there's sincerity behind his words. That's what I picked up on about Giovanni, that he was just giving very much Rico Suave. Okay, so we see that Giovanni is speaking with Georgia, and she's 35 years old. We find out that Giovanni goes horseback riding, and him and Georgia have this in common. Georgia actually says that she owns a horse. So that's one of the first things that they kind of bond over. Giovanni says that his grandparents are his perfect idea of marriage, that they, stayed married, I think, until maybe, they've been married for like a really long time. And Georgia says that her parents are still married, and that she has a great example just from them of what she wants in a marriage. And as she's saying this, she kind of gets emotional. And this is something that they kind of bond over. But right now, I'm not getting great vibes from Giovanni, at all. So then we go back to the women's lounge, and we are introduced to a woman named Miriam, who is 28 years old. We see that she's saying to the other women in the lounge that she's basically scared of being screwed over. And she says that she gets the impression that there was a guy saying the same things to multiple women. Immediately when she said this, I was like, Giovanni. I was like, I already clocked it. This Rico Suave looking person, I already knew what she was talking about. And while Miriam is saying this to some of the women in the quarters, we see that Georgia overhears her. And I know Georgia is already thinking she's probably talking about Giovanni, right? So we can already pick up on the women are kind of Giovanni's kind of a red flag, right? People are picking up on patterns with him. Okay, so then we're introduced to Eliza, and she's 30 years old. She says her past relationships have all been toxic. She says now everything is about appearance, and that she wants more depth from her relationship with a guy. She wants more and more substance. I wrote down that Eliza is also very beautiful, and I'm surprised to hear that every relationship she's been in the past has been toxic. I have my opinions on people that say that, but I'll get into that later. And then we basically see that she's talking to a guy named Alessandro. Alessandro is 26 years old. So, he's clearly on the younger end, because most of the people we've talked about so far are all in their 30s. And the first thing, Eliza wants to know when she finds out Alessandro's age is, are you ready for marriage? Are you ready to settle down? Alessandro basically says, yes, I am. I'm at an age where I'm ready for that. So he kind of reassures her that even though I'm young, I am ready to take that next step. What I wrote down is that this is the first connection that I saw, Alessandro and Eliza, that I saw excitement during the conversation. I felt like I could feel a spark and a connection between them. I could tell there was genuine excitement about talking to each other. So yeah, I'm excited about this connection. I was like, ooh, I could see this going somewhere. They also both seem pretty chill, calm, level-headed people so far. This is episode 1, so let me not get ahead of myself, but I'm just saying so far from what I see. Okay, then we go back to Giovanni and Georgia, and we see Giovanni gave Georgia a gift. Georgia goes straight to the point, right? Because she obviously overheard the conversation that Miriam was having in the women's quarters about Giovanni. And, as much as Georgia is like, okay, this gift is nice, in her mind, she's like, what's this guy doing? Her radar is up, right? So Georgia gets right to the point, and she asks if, Giovanni also gave Miriam a gift. And Giovanni says that, yes, he did give her a gift. And, Georgia basically says that she feels like he's kind of, saying the same things to different women, and that something about his behavior is sneaky. And I'm like, Georgia, yes, he's freaking sneaky. Clock it. Forget this guy, like she's picking up on it. Like, to me, this is a bad, bad sign. So she says to Giovanni that she doesn't like that he does this with everyone. And, Giovanni says that he's like a very generous person and that he likes to give to everyone around them. And I'm like, ew, like, I feel so bad because I feel like generosity is not a bad thing, but I do not want my man treating me a certain way and then going and treating every other woman he comes across the same way. Heck no, like, no. I'm sorry. Like, maybe that's silly of me, but I don't like that because it's giving you're for the team, you for everyone, when you need to just be for me. Okay. I don't like that. And I don't think any woman is going to like that. And I think that it is a sign of a guy being a player, right? Like, why do you need to be generous to all these women that are not your actual woman? Like, you need to be generous to your woman. That should be your top priority, And yeah, Giovanni, to me, bad vibes. Like, he's no, just no. Georgia basically says that she thinks he could be a player. And I'm like, yeah, Georgia, he is. Giovanni obviously denies, because this is what men do. He's like, I'm not that guy. And Georgia's like, oh, I think it's BS. Yeah. And basically by the end of that conversation, she's mad at him, but you can tell that she's probably going to continue talking to him. And even Giovanni's body language, when that pod conversation ended, he just looked relieved, almost like, oh my God, my mask is slipping, but this one hasn't left yet. Like, I'm not a fan. Then we see that Giovanni is also connecting with a woman named Georgiana. Okay. And Giovanni says that he thought a lot about her. And he says that he only believes in one love. I'm like, Giovanni and these freaking lines about love and like something about him is just so cheesy to me. Like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, what is happening? And it seems like Georgiana is also suspicious of Giovanni. Okay, so this is the running theme. All the women are suspicious of this guy, as they should be, because he's suspicious. And basically, yeah, Georgiana is suspicious. But one thing she mentioned in this conversation with Giovanni that I was like, is she basically says to him that she could see him being introduced to her family. And I was like, what? Like, that was weird, as much as Georgiana is like on guard, you can tell that she still does like Giovanni. So we go back to the men's quarters and we see Giovanni is basically torn between Georgiana and Georgia. Wow, this is like tongue tying me, guys. Like, all these names are like, I'm like trying to keep it straight. So he's basically saying that him and Georgiana are very similar, but him and Georgia have a depth to them that he doesn't have with Georgiana, right? And it seems like him and Georgia also have more like, Georgia kind of challenges him a bit more, right? She pushes back on him, she questions him, and I think that Georgiana they don't really have that back and forth. So that's like what Giovanni is kind of grappling with now, which to me, I'm like, Giovanni should have no options, but this is the life we live, guys. Even players they're still playing. So we're then introduced to Parmi, and we see that Parmi is also interested in Georgiana. It seems like he's pretty locked in with her. He says that his attraction has always been physical in the past, so he's excited to do Love is Blind to kind of get out of that cycle. He tells Georgiana that 40% of his body is tatted. And they have this conversation and you can tell that Georgiana is like, oh my God, I don't even know why he said that. I'm like, is this your way of having her mind wandering? I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was pretty attractive. I was like, 40%. Okay, let me think about that. Let me calculate it in my mind. No, let me stay focused, guys. But seriously, I was like, 40%, okay. And I feel like he just tells her this for a reason, to just kind of say, I got some tattoos. He asked Georgiana what her family basically would think about him. Georgiana is very honest and says that she doesn't really know how her family will take to him and that she's worried that they might not be so open to the fact that he is like Indian, right? And she says that she doesn't have prejudice, but that she's worried that her family will. And I guess I was surprised because if I was Parmi, I think that response would probably make me a little less interested in Georgiana. But Parmi doesn't seem to be bothered by this. You know, he's still like, I'm still all in for you. You know, we can work that out. You can just tell that he's not super fazed by that. Like, yeah, it's something that's worrying him, but it's not necessarily deterring him from his connection with Georgiana. And then Georgiana also gets emotional during this conversation and says that there's something about Parmi that makes her feel safe. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think for Georgiana, Parmi would probably be a better match than Giovanni, right? Because that guy's a mess. So we go back to Alessandra and Eliza, and we see that he sends her flowers and a card to her pod. Alessandro shares that his father died when he was, I believe, 12 years old. And he says that his father worked in cinema, and he currently also works in the film industry. So he thinks about his father a lot. So this was kind of the first time that we see, you know, Alessandro like really opening up to Eliza, Giovanni, and Georgia. And Georgia is asking what if questions about like different scenarios that they would deal with. Specifically, I think they were questions about involving like having a child. And if the child says he wants to stay out past curfew, are you going to tell him to take a taxi back? Or are we going to pick him up? Something along those lines. And Giovanni basically says that he's just going to ask, you know, the son to get a taxi back or something. Georgia's like very upset by this response and says that what kind of like parenting is that? Like, you know, I don't agree. And what I picked up from this conversation was it seems like Georgia's looking for reasons to cut and run away from Giovanni because I was like, what are we doing here? What is with these what if scenarios that she's just pulling out of her ASS? Like, it's so strange. And it's giving like she's looking for a reason to drop him. That's what I picked up on because I was like, huh? Even Giovanni was confused and he was like, if anything, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. You know, why are you coming with up with these scenarios now? Like, we'll get to that. Yeah, Georgiana just seemed like annoyed, and personally, I think her annoyance is coming from the fact that deep down, she knows that Giovanni's not a good option for her, but we shall see. She needs to, you know, I think she needs to drop him like a sack of potatoes, but we shall see. So then we go back to the women's lounge and we see Georgia says that, you know, Giovanni is the guy she knows the least about, but is still very interested in him. And I'm confused because I'm like, how is he somebody that you know the least about, but it seems like you've been talking to him the most? That alone should tell you that Giovanni's not the one. But as women, you know, when the writing is on the wall, we just sometimes have to ignore it. So yeah, and I don't know why. I feel like Georgia's going to make a big mistake with this Giovanni guy, but that's not a good thing. I mean, you literally talk the whole time in the pods. How do you know nothing about him? And I think she's picking up on a level of mysteriousness from Giovanni. You know, no, that's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. And then Georgia goes on to say that there was a voice in the pod telling her to be careful. Her higher self is literally trying to warn her, be careful. We gonna see if Georgia's gonna listen to this because literally, like, there's so many signs. Not only that, but she can also tell that the women in the women's quarters or the women's lounges are not vibing with Giovanni and that they all have a consensus that he could just be saying the same thing to everyone. So with all this knowledge, we're going to see what Georgia's going to do. Okay. So we go back to Giovanni and he's now talking to Georgiana again. Georgiana says Giovanni is a good liar. And when she says this, Giovanni laughs. So at this point, Giovanni is just playing games, okay? He's playing games in all these women's faces, and he thinks it's funny. Interesting, guys, because I'm like, what was that laugh about? If somebody called me a liar, I would not be laughing. He's laughing because it's true. I just can't. So Giovanni mentions, you know, that he could see himself getting down on one knee in a few days when he's talking to Georgiana. And, you know, he tells this story about a room having some kind of name similar to Georgiana's name. And I know he brings this up because he's trying to make it sound like this was some kind of sign that maybe he's supposed to be with Georgiana. Oh God. And yeah, and Georgiana seems to be eating this up. You know, I mean, at least it seems that way. I feel like she's suspicious of Giovanni, but then you can tell she's still interested in him. So I don't know what's going on here. And then Georgiana basically gives a scenario, and she wants to know if he's going to be there when she like emotionally needs him, you know, like if there's something going on with her parents, or a tragedy, will he be there? And in my mind, I'm like, I noticed a pattern. Georgiana's asking him this question because deep down, she knows that he won't be there. Like, if you have to ask somebody that question, I think that she's noticing that Giovanni lacks some sort of emotional depth there, right? Because why is she asking that? She's asking because she feels like maybe she can't rely on him emotionally, right? And just to do a little flashback to when Georgia, right? This is Georgiana that's talking to Giovanni now. Remember when Georgia was asking Giovanni these what if questions about having a child, she was asking those questions because she can tell that Giovanni doesn't seem like there's something up there, right? Because why are you asking those types of questions? But yeah, Georgiana's kind of doing the same thing. And I think that it's a sign that Giovanni's not the one. He's not the one. Okay, so then we go back to the women's lounge and we see Georgiana saying that she likes guys that are kind of intense and almost like artistic and like maybe have a little bit of a passion with their feelings, and that is who Giovanni is, right? So that's kind of where that attraction is coming from. But she also admits that also scares her, right? And that Giovanni scares her. And we know why he scares her, because I think with Giovanni, there's an uncertainty there. She can pick up on him being trouble, but that attraction is still there for her. She says Parmi is like the opposite, that he's sweet, he's kind, and that he, is, kind of gives her that reassurance, right? That Giovanni is kind of struggling with. But the thing about Parmi is she says that Parmi's not as deep as Giovanni is. In a partner, you can't have everything, but I would rather go with the guy that's kind and sweet, personally. Okay, so then we go to Nicola, and we see that he's talking to Karen again. And I wrote down that I got this excited energy between them. I thought that their conversation went well, and I could just pick up on them both being really excited while talking to each other. They were flirting a bit. Karen asked if Nicola is a passionate person and how he likes to be kissed. So things were getting kind of like, a little sensual. Nicola says he doesn't like gentle kisses, and that if anything, he, likes it a little more rough. And we see that Karen basically has to take her sweater off and says it's getting hot, like, oh my God. Nicola goes on to say that he mentions that he has a lot of blocked numbers on his phone, which I thought that this was kind of weird. Like, why are you out here blocking people? But maybe that's a good thing. Maybe he's just blocking exes. So we basically see that Nicola is torn between Karen and Ludovica. It seems like Nicola has a calmer connection with Ludovica. And it seems like, he says that Ludovica is someone that he can rely on. But with Karen, I think that Nicola has a little bit more of that excitement, that giddiness with her. And I think that Karen might be a better option for him, but we'll see. So we go back to the women's quarters. We see Karen say Nicola is her number one. So Karen is really feeling Nicola, right? And Ludovica just so happens to overhear this conversation. And she's kind of makes this face where you can just tell she doesn't look happy, because she's starting to realize that she's not the only one Nicola is connecting with. And funny enough, Ludovica actually has she basically says to Karen that she's also talking to Nicola. And, Karen is now, so basically Karen and Ludovica are both aware that they're both into Nicola. Okay, we see Davide and Ludovica, and it seems like they kind of have a lighter connection in comparison to Ludovica and Nicola, right? And I kind of like them more together because I feel like they laugh a lot, they joke a lot, but Davide strikes me as a little superficial. There's some things that he says that I'm like, huh? And I'm confused by Davide because let's keep it a buck, guys. He's not really a looker. So in my mind, I'm like, you don't need to be worried about whether the person on the other side of that pot is hot. You need to be worried about whether she's gonna be into you. And maybe that's me, but like, I don't know. He's a little strange because I'm like, he seems cool. I like that he can crack jokes and like, but then he says these things that I'm like, huh? What are you talking about? But I do see more flirty energy with them. And I think that, yeah, so we'll see. And then we see basically Giovanni is weighing out his connections between Georgiana and Georgia, and that's how episode 1 ends. So yeah, I tried to kind of not make this too long, but please let me know what you guys think of these people. At this point, I am the most excited about Alessandro and Eliza. But we'll see. Those two, I think I really like their connection a lot. Thank you guys for watching. If you made it this far, thank you so much. And please subscribe because I do reality TV reviews and I also talk about things that are happening in the world. Thank you guys. Talk to you next time. Bye.